Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Objective on what is, for me, the saddest day in the calendar year, October 7th, and maybe also the saddest day for some of you. But I fear may be replaced by other dates marking even worse and more gruesome and bigger massacres of innocents living in civilized countries. Could be in Israel, could be elsewhere in the civilized world, but I fear that the worst is yet to come. And the reason for my fear is Israel's response to October 7th, namely their policy of appeasement, and also the world's treatment of Israel since October 7th, and their policy of emboldening Israel's enemies. Our title, Why Israel Couldn't Win, does not mean that Israel was unable to win, never had the ability to win. It means how Israel's errors in their thinking and their policy hampered and handicapped and prevented their success in what should have been a pretty easy war to win. Here joining me is someone you know very well. He's apparently not shaved in the last 2 years. Hi, Razi.
Hey Rucka, yeah, we did a show. The first show we did on the October 7th attack was on October 7th while the attack was going on, and it was a Saturday. This used to be a weekday show. That Saturday was the first day in which it became ended up becoming a 7 day a week show. But the title for today is kind of a throwback to the title of the show, The Daily Objective we did on October 9th, which was titled Why Israel Can't Win. And at the time, people were upset with me for that title. Unfortunately, 2 years on, I would love to sit here and say, remember when I titled an episode so stupidly Why Israel Can't Win, and then 2 weeks later, Gaza was flattened without calling people in their homes before bombing them, and Palestinianism is no longer a threat to Israel. Well, 2 years on, Palestinianism in Israel is as much of a threat as it always has been. And Jews worldwide are facing attacks and a threat like they haven't seen since the Nazis were in power. And um, it's not, in one specific area as it was back then. It is pretty much everywhere in the world. If you are a Jew, certainly if you are an Israeli Jew, you have to try to hide your identity or hope that you don't run into the ever-growing part of the population that thinks that attacking you is a good thing and is somehow a legitimate response to something that Jews are doing.
Yeah, the way that Jews worldwide are um, being treated is pretty shocking. But yeah, I kind of saw this coming in advance, like some years back. I was starting to notice, and I think anyone could have seen this if they were, looking that like anti-Semitism and like gruesome anti-Semitism, just like, denying the Holocaust and giving, another hearing to Hitler type of thing was kind of like moving within the Overton window of what's acceptable. And I think just like generally like doing away with um, like principled thinking in general was kind of going out the window. So generally, the Jews don't fare well when people are not thinking and are acting out of excitement and emotions and looking for a scapegoat. So this has been rising definitely on the internet. You can see it, and after a while, you could see it's like not just an internet thing anymore. Every synagogue in the U.S., at least, and probably I imagine in Europe as well, had a armed guard. Um, Long before, several years before October 7th. And since then, I think it's like more of like a team of guards. So yeah, I mean, you've been documenting it the last couple years, right? In Australia, straight up, they're torching synagogues. I mean, you've been talking all about it, but yeah, the treatment of Jews is pretty telling, and it kind of goes to show you that the whole anti-Israel, these the Palestinian movement, Palestinianism, however we would call it, is not. It's not it does not appeal to the clearest of thinkers, and it doesn't. It feeds on kind of stupidity of sorts. It kind of feeds on excitement, and I mean, ultimately, this is a movement of barbarism. I mean, October 7th could not have been a clearer demonstration of barbarism. I mean, things you never could have imagined anybody could bring themselves to do were being done and live streamed and gleefully, and the um, the videos were being sent around on Telegram among people in Gaza and around the world that support the Palestinian movement, just being openly celebrated. I mean, that's what this movement leads you to. This pro-Palestine movement, this negation of Israel, which is all the Palestine movement ever was and is. It's the return of the primitive, to quote this channel's namesake. So yeah, not sure if I'm
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah, we saw, I mean, remember opening Twitter and, Twitter was full of videos of the Palestinians doing what they were doing, and like really, unbelievable images that I at the time was thinking, is this even real? And it turned out, yeah, to be absolutely real. Obviously, we're not going to show any of those videos. I do want to show a video from that evening, uh, but from London. That's thousands and thousands of people just going out spontaneously to celebrate the mass murder of Jews that they were seeing. They were seeing the same videos we're seeing. By the way, these people still protest on the street of London every weekend, but now they're claiming to be against the genocide. This was their response when they saw Jews being murdered, children, women, people in their homes, people in a music festival, people taken by force, including children. There's a famous, I don't know which of those videos are more famous in my mind, of a child who had been taken hostage, surrounded by other children while the adults are filming the other children, kind of bullying that child, saying, "Where's mommy? Where's mommy?" That child has since been killed by one of the terrorists. By the way, he was not taken by Hamas, as many of the people murdered, many of the people taken hostage were not taken or murdered by Hamas. They were taken or murdered by random Palestinians who just like the people in London took to the streets, they went out and decided to participate. Other people in Gaza also took to the streets, and the streets of Gaza that day looked like the streets of London that night. People celebrating what this is, and I have to say, if you look at where the conversation is today, I'm sure that the advocates of Palestinianism, the Palestinian cause, expected a much more difficult uphill battle to get to where they are. Like it, and they should have expected that, because when you see those images of people going, really dedicating their life and risking their life just in order to take the lives of others because those others are Jews, you would think that it would be not that easy to convince people that those being that those doing the slaughtering are the victims and not those being slaughtered. But that is where the consensus is today. It's not just a major part of the conversation, which would be terrifying on its own. This is the consensus. I mean, any defense of Israel is outside the Overton window.
Right. I mean, even just like saying Happy Hanukkah is like a Zionist statement. I remember like sometime early in this war, like Pink, the singer Pink, You know, it really has nothing to do with Israel. She like posts a menorah saying, you know, Happy Hanukkah, and somebody replies to her saying like, this is like really messed up for you to post, a little insensitive for you to post at a time like this, you know, because like it's insensitive to the Gazans who are, you know, being genocided in that guy's view. And Pink replies to him going like what's messed up? Me, you know, being Jewish or alive, you know? But I mean internet comments obviously are characteristically pretty stupid and unfocused and you know, dropping of context and in so many ways representing the lowest of human thinking or non-thinking. And that is the sort of archetype of the times we live in so many ways, and has been becoming increasingly so. And that is the archetype of the so-called Palestinian, the Arab world's reaction to the formation of Israel and the anti-Israel movement in general, the passionate kind of rhetoric against Israel. It's just so void of any clear thinking. Ultimately, this is, you know, this Israel's war cannot be won only with debating, you know. I think Israel needs to think more clearly about what is war and when there's a time for war, how to fight it. And obviously, just acknowledge the fact that there would be no Israel today. There would be almost no Jews or no Jews alive today had not the Allies fought a war properly, you know, some 80 years ago in World War II. So this really isn't working. This, I mean, we could talk. I don't know if you want to move from October 7th over to the, you know, Israel's PR campaign of a war. That, I mean, that to me is something I remember I probably spoke to you around or sometime around October 7th and or after a little after thinking, and I was like, okay, but now like at least Israelis get it. Now Israelis are done burying their head in the sand, and not even the weak leadership of Israel can evade this one. And then I saw the dispensing of leaflets, letting the Gazans know where they're going to bomb or where they need to clear out of. And I saw as Israel invaded Gaza a few weeks after October 7th, I see just like a scene of a bunch of Gazans standing outside with their phones up, videotaping a big screen in their like town square type location in Gaza somewhere, where they're all watching the Hamas's GoPro fighting against the IDF. And I'm thinking to myself, after October 7th, you're not going to bomb these guys? Like, a public expression of solidarity with my enemy is part of the war. You're aligning yourself with my enemy in time of war. And you know, we can talk about what Israel should do about the expressions of solidarity in Western Europe or elsewhere around the world. That's a more complicated one. But definitely, when you're attacked by Gaza, by the Gazans themselves, and now the Gazans are out in the open expressing their solidarity. I mean, we're talking, you know, young men here. We're talking about adult men out in public, showing their sympathy, their solidarity with Hamas in this war. The fact Israel didn't blow them to pieces angered me at the time. Obviously, today I've kind of grown numb to it. Like, yeah, that's what Israel does. They continuously appease. They're polite to the enemy, and they try their best not to hurt any quote non-combatants or quote innocents. I mean, it's rare for you to even hear anyone mention, unless it's like on this channel or you know, or a similar you know, like objectivist related channel on YouTube or something. I barely ever hear anybody talk about how October 7th was not a Hamas operation alone. It was Joe Schmo Gazan. It was, you know, moms, dads, and kids, you know, entering Israel. The dads, you know, poured the gasoline on the Israeli families, and the kid was given the match to set them on fire. I mean, that's who entered Israel. It was not quote Hamas. It was Hamas at first, followed by everybody out of Gaza, and Israel needs to pacify, in the technical sense of the word. They need to bring the Gazans to surrender, and they're not doing that. They don't. It's rare for them to even mention that the Gazans are the ones who attacked. So Netanyahu and his government immediately declared war on Hamas. They should have declared war on Gaza, or they could have declared war on Palestinianism if you're gonna do the ism war. Declare war on the Palestinian movement, so to speak. Instead, he declared it on a single organization that could easily change their name. And if we jump way ahead, it's looking these days like basically Hamas is just going to change their name. They're just going to rename the ruling party of Gaza in this, bullshit hostage deal. And you're just going to have Hamas by a different name, which they could have just done in the first place and saved a lot of time, right? Saved a lot of pain for people involved. But anyway, I'm ranting over here.
Well, you're more optimistic than I am if you think they're actually going to be forced to actually going to end up changing their name. I don't know if it's going to go that far, but yeah, Hamas is yeah, yeah, they have won. I mean, there is no other way to look at it. And yeah, going back to the PR campaign, that PR campaign of anybody, certainly Israel's official PR campaign, which, there's questions of whether it should even exist, but of pro-Israel pundits out there, what can they do when the prime minister sees with his own eyes the entire population taking part in this and then declares while it is happening that it is not happening, that it's only Hamas? When we see the entire population of Gaza taking part in the attack or celebrating it in the streets and uh continuing that celebration until it was time to video themselves and put it on social media looking like they're suffering so that it can be used. Um, and it has been used, by the way, if we saw that video of the celebration on October 7th, but the PR journey of the anti-Israel crowd is interesting because it started with the celebrations, then it was ceasefire now, ceasefire now before Israel actually does anything to prevent future attacks, to try to bring back the hostages to the extent that was attempted in military action, to try to fight back in that war. That was when the demand for ceasefire happened. I remember Jeremy Corbyn waited about 8 hours until after the attack started, because that's about when it was kind of over, at least the main part of it, before he said anything about it on Twitter. And when he said something about it on Twitter, it was, we need to have a ceasefire. I mean, and of course, this guy is now leading the essentially Hamas party in the UK, which is gonna get some votes. I mean, 5 people in the election last year in the UK got elected to parliament on a purely pro-Hamas ticket. And if you look at history, and I'm gonna talk a lot on this episode about comparing to the Nazis because of how similar this is. The Nazis also didn't win, the first time they participated in the elections. It took a few times. And this as a movement is getting so strong that I think we should expect to see that day. By the way, just in general, the comparisons to the Nazis here are absolutely necessary because the goal is identical. I mean, the Nazis had additional goals other than exterminating the Jews, but that was a goal. And this is the entire goal of Palestinianism. But the arguments were also the same. It wasn't that the Nazis said, because it's interesting now, many on the pro-Palestinian side actually call, Israel Nazis. Complete obvious reversal of history, because Nazis weren't the ones trying to prevent the extermination of Jews, but the ones trying to make it happen. But the Nazis didn't say we're going to kill the Jews because we're evil. They said we're going to kill the Jews because we're victims of the Jews. The Germans are victims of what the Jews did in the agreement after World War I, and the reparations that we have to pay and so on. We are victims of the Jews and we are fighting back. And it's resistance by any means necessary or what have you. The wording may have been slightly different, but the goal has been exactly the same and is exactly the same. And that's why when we make that comparison, we can actually explain that comparison as opposed to using it for name calling. Let me quickly thank our super chatters. Thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat. Thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. Thank you, Equal to Reality, for the super chat. Equal to Reality says, "Hi, Raka. It is sad to see you in such horrid circumstances." Thank you, Gail, for the super chat. Gail says, "Yes, the non-thinking human is potentially a vicious animal." And thank you, Robin, for being a member of the Ayn Rand Center UK's YouTube channel for 39 months. Robin says, "I've been unpleasantly surprised by the consistent anti-Israel propaganda in the mainstream news in the past 2 years. Hi, Raka." Um, yeah, maybe by the extent of it, but since you have been a member for 39 months, you've been watching the channel since before October 7th and presumably on and after. And you know, because because of many reasons, we didn't call this episode "We Told You So," but unfortunately we did. This is what we said would happen when we started talking about this when it first happened.
Yeah, I mean, the more you study history, the more you just can't believe the types of absurdities that took place and were acceptable and just were unchallenged. I'm reading Einat Wilf's book, newest book, which she's an interesting, very interesting person, an Israeli politician, always was on the left. She was part of the Oslo Accord Brigade and very much kind of learned her lesson and is today one of the most, if not the most, sensible voice against her former kind of position, and much more focused and clear thinker than almost anyone who's talking about Israel and the Palestinian conflict, etc. So I'm reading her book and I'm learning about how, like, I mean, some of you already know this, from like the moment Israel was founded. First of all, Israel's the one country that wins wars and sues for peace. And the people who Israel beats at a war, a defensive war, right? They attack Israel. Israel beats them, sues them for peace. And then the losers of the war demand unconditional surrender. And this has just been going on um, from the moment that the Arabs were displaced from Israel. And, we could delve into how many of them, were displaced electively by Israel or how many of them left because they wanted to clear out for the time of the war. Not the point, I think. The point is whoever started that war is responsible for everything that happened during the war. So just really don't start a war, is my advice. But from the moment those Arabs were displaced, anyone who tried to like encourage any type of settlement anew, like new type of farming, settlement in their new hosting country, be it Lebanon, Jordan, wherever it was physically attacked and killed, and in the types of attacks that would remind you of October 7th, just a mob rushing of any Arab who was trying to help the Arabs settle in their new home or their new place, because that is a sanctioning of Israel, right? That is a sanctioning of the Zionist entity to try and help the Arabs settle where they are. So the permanent refugee status of the Arabs was embraced, and anyone who tried to challenge it was physically assaulted and killed. And the United Nations, within a few years, became just like a full time antagonist of Israel, like special departments set up just for critiquing Israel and for protecting the so-called refugees' rights and all that. So this has been going on for a long time. The relationship of America to Israel also, what we're seeing today has been going on for ages, right? America helps Israel while, holding the leash with the other hand. And Israel really should have insisted on independence a long time ago, or at the very least been very clear in their thinking and clear in their communication to the American allies, and said, "We'd love to have your help with this common enemy, but X, Y, and Z needs to happen, and we're not going to treat these barbarians, these savages, as though they're a rational player." There's a lot Israel should have done over the last number of decades. But the type of thing we see with the Biden showing up and making Israel start uh, bussing in humanitarian aid into Gaza. You know, all the stuff you hated about Biden's involvement with this war. This has been going on for many decades. You know, George Bush, the Republican, and then Trump now also. 1 minute he's saying you better release those hostages or you're gonna have hell to pay, and then pressuring Israel to sign a deal. Moments later. So but the type of thing we're seeing today has been happening for a long time. The fact that Europeans and Americans and just the whole civilized world think they could beat up on Israel this way and it's never going to bite them is sad. The Islamic world, the savages worldwide are seeing what you can get away with, what you can do to a civilized country. And October 7th showed them what you can do. Do you folks not think that a similar acts can take place in Europe? That hostages cannot be captured in Europe and in the US and elsewhere? I mean, it's just the fact that you think you can scapegoat Israel and beat up on them and just treat them this way, and that you somehow won't have to battle the same demon in the future is just the ultimate evasion.
Yeah, a point about Biden. Yes, what Biden did, the presidents before him did. Why it's unique in Biden's case is that Biden did this post October 7th. And yeah, in the past, whenever Israel had to do some sort of military operation in Gaza or in the West Bank or in Lebanon, it's always the same. It starts from Arabs choosing to murder Jews, and then the international condemnations, at least from the West, of the fact that Arabs murdered Jews, and some completely empty statements about how Israel has the right to defend itself. But October 7th was different in a lot of ways, not just in the numbers, but in the both the fact that they didn't do it like bandits in the night. They wanted the world to see. A part of the planning was the GoPro cameras. Part of the planning was to show the world because they knew the worst atrocities they can show, the more it would motivate their people being the people in Gaza, the people in the West Bank, and the people in London and elsewhere who took to the streets that day. And the fact that the entire population then joined in or took to the streets to celebrate should have been a turning point for everybody. And with the rhetoric, by the way, when I tell people go back, watch the shows we did on October 7th and 8th and 9th, the one thing where that I definitely got wrong is I was so impressed by the initial reaction. I thought it was more than just empty condemnations. We're sending, an aircraft carrier and all that stuff. And of course, the aircraft carrier was probably there to say, look, we're watching what everybody's doing and making sure we don't escalate the situation after October 7th. Blinken saying, I keep forgetting the exact quote, but something to the effect of Israel could go it alone if it had to, but as long as the United States exists, it'll never have to. And that ended as soon as Israel started. America's support for Israel ended immediately. I mean, again, this is one of the things that, as much as I criticize Netanyahu all the time, the fact that he kept it going with such a hostile pro-Hamas government in Washington is to his credit, even though he should have done a lot more. Um, I wanted to also touch on, you said about the people who left in 1948. Yeah, when you're part of a war effort or not part of the war effort and just sitting there are people in Gaza, certainly the children, who are not part of the war effort who are going to die. Yeah, that's not how it goes. The people who absolutely weren't kicked out by Israel were the Arabs who fought alongside Israel. And so, yeah, you made your bed. And look, the same goes for the people in Gaza. I mean, I've been advocating on this channel for a long time that if Israel actually is going to win, the population in Gaza cannot stay in Gaza. That's a very, very basic thing. I don't think they should be allowed to leave at this point until they surrender and release the hostages. But once they do, the reward they get is get the fuck out and never come back. That is the reward for the people of Gaza, and that is where actual peace can happen. The other way around, there wouldn't be peace in the Middle East. If Israel was actually eliminated, it's not like there's going to be peace. As you mentioned, Arabs, the next best thing for them after killing Jews is killing each other. So yeah, the road to peace in the Middle East requires total victory by Israel.
Yeah, and not only that, but if Israel is eliminated, you would never hear the word Palestine or Palestinian again. This is a cynical, nihilistic faux identity forged as the mere negation of Israel. That's all it ever was, and that's all it is. And it's like the pro-Palestine people are aware of it, and they lean into it. All that concerns them is being anti-Israel. Again, October 7th is just like the ugliest, or so far the ugliest, bum rushing of innocent people in their homes and music festivals and so on, and attacks on the military targets or the military of defending a free country, a country in which people of all backgrounds have basic rights protected. Just the ugliest act of destruction, and that this was celebrated and that this is supported. And then, like you said, it was live streamed. Like they spent resources live streaming it, resources that could have been spent, hurting and killing more Israelis. Because sadly, we're this barbarism is becoming or is commonplace. And it's these types of pogroms, these types of mobbish attacks on Jews, these very emotionalistic scapegoating of the Jews is obviously what played a big role in giving rise to the modern Zionist movement. You had Jews who were the most assimilated, Enlightenment, pro-Enlightenment, fans of the opera, fans of the of poetry and of the academia and all that, active in modern day, in then modern day German speaking society and elsewhere. And these were people who realized the pogroms are not going away, and the scapegoating is not going away, and this suspicion and blaming of the Jews seems to be more deep seated than even the Enlightenment was able to address. So they said, let's organize, call ourselves Jews, and go build a state in Palestine. And then that became the justification for further attacks on Jews, right? In Russia and elsewhere. Oh, the Zionists, the Zionists, the Zionists, they're controlling the world, the Zionists. Let's go kill the Zionists. In the Arab world, any mention of a Jewish state was got the reaction, got a pogrom in, and October 7th style attacks on Jewish peaceful villages and towns. So it's like, you start to think if the Jews might be damned if they do and damned if they don't you? So today Israel is like a placeholder for all things that people want to target. Israel has become like the blame the Jew, like the justification for blaming the Jew. It's like the symbol of it's like a pass to have that kind of mobbish, emotionalistic, irrational attack on the innocent. And there's really nothing you can say. You can say, I don't agree with October 7th, and you're now a Zionist. That's kind of where the standard is set. If you don't want to see babies burned and women slaughtered while being raped, then you're a Zionist now, and you're part of the problem. So we are dealing with just the most nihilistic and ugliest of forces, and this is mainstream. We are living in like a type of Hunger Games of an era where we have like the murdering of a CEO and murder and torching of synagogues and stabbing of Jews as like basically popular sport. Does anyone doubt that if the law were lifted, purge style, for a moment, that the Jews would not just be targeted en masse immediately? It's very clear that Jews don't count, that the murder of Jews is not even considered um, as like as abhorrent behavior at this point in much of the Western world. And if that's the way people are feeling, it's not long before the political realities reflect that. So bad times ahead. And again, I remind you that Israel and the Jews are the canary in the coal mine. You might think it's not your problem, but history shows otherwise. I think a lot of people had to suffer for the appeasement of Hitler and his ilk.
Yeah, you mentioned the murder of the CEO, and yeah, I think of that and the murder of Charlie Kirk, and generally, I've said, I think I've said on this show, if anything's ever gonna get me to give up on humanity, it's the laughing emoji on Facebook. Because the things you see posted as news that get thousands of reactions, tens of thousands of reactions, with the most common one being the laughing emoji, are things like the CEO got shot on the streets of Manhattan. Uh, Rich people in a submarine who wanted to go see the Titanic die. So it's a laughing emoji. Charlie Kirk had views we didn't like, and he got murdered. Laughing emoji. Um, you mentioned what Pink said about Hanukkah. I saw today post by a post by a football club in England saying Happy Sukkot, the holiday to Jews, and it wasn't the most common, but there was a lot of angry emojis. People are angry that Fulham is wishing Jews a happy holiday because it's like supporting genocide. And yeah, like you said, if you think this is all about Israel, look, this is about as what Ayn Rand called hatred of the good for being the good. And as if you think in collectivist terms, the Jews are the collective that you are going to hate because they seem to be and often are way more successful than others. Many years ago, I remember an Arab friend told me, "You don't understand how much Jews are hated in the Arab world." And I said, yeah, I know anti-Semitism is mainstream. And he's like, no, like anything bad that happens, the weather is bad, they blame the Jews. Literally anything. And I was thinking, I was hearing that, and I was thinking, I'm glad that's not where I am. I'm glad that's not the kind of society I was born to, not as a Jew, but as a human. That's not what I would wish on anybody. And now we see some of that. We see more and more elements of that here in the West, and this will absolutely make us more like them than anything else. Thank you, Apollo Zeus, for the super chat. Thank you, Pooja, for the super chat. Pooja says, thanks for this memorial episode. Thanks for speaking up, and thanks for keeping my world sane. Thank you. And thank you, Christian, for the super chat. Christian says, I worry about Europe. I worry more about Europe than about Israel. We are completely helpless and ready for submission. Then he gives a quote from Dan Shueftan: Europeans get up in the morning ready to capitulate to evil. Uh, you are correct. Raka and I disagree on which is, where is it, where it's more dangerous, but I think we both agree that nowhere does it seem like it's heading in the right direction.
I mean, definitely Jews in Europe are probably not feeling very safe. But I mean, Europeans in general should really, really be trepidatious. And I know a lot of them are. A lot of them have been trying to push back against, the toleration of Islamists having their own set of laws and, being allowed to kind of do whatever they want in the name of, I don't know, political correctness or whatever. I understand this has been going on, but I mean, again, if you don't see Israel as your ally in this, if you take the energy that you have and your rhetoric and your any sort of social capital you have, any sort of political capital you have, to blame Israel and to form conspiracy theories against Israel, and that's the biggest problem on your mind, then you choose death over life. Here you've got a country that is facing the same enemy, the same problem, as you're worried about overtaking Europe and you're opting to just hate Israel with all of your might. And it's going to be to your own detriment. There's comparisons to Nazi Germany and all that. In a sense, you're in a scarier position because until Hitler invades, Belgium or whatever, he's not there. And the Belgians don't have to, live under his rule. But here you've got an ideology that is quite seated, quite common and spread out in Europe, and the holders of this Islamic ideology strongly see themselves as having the right to rule over you, and they see Europe as their future domain. The only thing preventing them so far seems to be their own incoherence and lack of organization and their own infighting. So yeah, you again, you blame Israel. It's to your own detriment, or you make your hatred of Israel your top priority, your hatred of Jews your top priority. It's to your own detriment. And you can look at Candace Owens, who I imagine the last time I was here on this channel, Candace was already making jaws drop, but was like still only a fraction of where she would end up. Someone like Candace Owens, just she hates Jews more than she loves life, right? Like people who are in her camp, people who are following her down this path, and there's a lot of people on the right who have opted to do that in the last couple of years and in the last year. People who chose to blame Israel the minute that Charlie Kirk's head hit the ground. They chose they discovered, they realized, quote unquote, that Israel was behind it. These people hate Israel. They hate Israel more than they love Charlie Kirk, more than they hate, politically motivated shootings, more than they hate evil. They hate Israel. And these people truly are choosing death over life in the scheme of things. And it's, again, it's to their own detriment, you know? I don't always agree with Michael Malice, the pundit, and I'm not sure what he's doing so much these days. But he said something really clever. He often says things that are clever. Not obviously we don't always agree with him, but they are clever. He said, "If Jews didn't exist, you would still be a janitor." Those are words to live by. I think I've quoted that here on the channel in other contexts. Like, you want to blame the world for your problems? You want to blame the world for your problems? The fact that you're not getting your life together, that's on you. So, but what makes it sort of complicated is like the anti-Semites kind of try to flip that around on the Jews, and they say, "Oh no, the Jews are the ones playing victim all the time, right? Like the Jews got kicked out of all those countries, and the Jews are, pissing off the Arabs, and they're doing this, they're doing that, they're doing all these things that are causing people to justifiably hate them and blame them, and then are playing the victim. So they're kind of flipping that on the Jews, and it's kind of it's kind of an awkward thing to try to explain to people. Like, no, 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 no. Sometimes the world really is being unfair to the one person. I know we have this Jordan Petersonian wisdom we try to carry. Like if 100 women reject you, it's not women are not the problem. Um, but sometimes 109 countries kicked you out because there's something wrong with those countries. And again, you see what the Jews do the minute you let them out of their cage. They build things. They trade. They invent things. They cure your cancer. What do Palestinians, quote unquote, do the minute you let them get past the gate? We're here to remember what they do the minute they're able to reach you. Fucking lowlifes. All right, I'll relax.
Uh, yeah, and shout out to the janitors out there. No offense, be an absolutely decent, hardworking, good person, and without janitors, we'd all be living in filth.
Yeah, and their way. I'll take a trillion janitors over one Harvard professor. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat. Thank you, PC, for the super chat and for the content of the super chat. PC says, Razi, hope you're well. Did you see the people calling for Intifada in London days after Manchester? Well, I'm thanking you for that because we have a video of that from today, and I'd rather not see it. So you've saved us from that. But of course, actually, Rucka, you mentioned Candace, and you mentioned where Candace has gone since your last appearance on the channel, which was October 7th of last year. I'm not sure if she's got, I'm trying to remember. I do remember it was March, I think, of last year or May when she did the video of um, saying how her best friend in kindergarten was a Jew, and then her best friend in school was a Jew. I think it was over a year ago when she did the whole "I'm not a flat earther, I'm not a round earther, I've left the cult of science." So yeah, Candace is on a journey, but the scary thing is, so is much of the American right. I'm not even talking about the American left. When it comes to Israel, they are gone, never to return. But so much of the American right, we talked about this on the channel that there was the top five most downloaded political podcasts, and the Wall Street Journal was the normal one. It was fifth place. Of the top four, two were of the left, two were of the right, so to speak. The two on the right were Candace Owens and what's his name? Tucker Carlson. And yeah, Daniel tells me that the left the cult of science was July 2024. Uh, yeah, she keeps getting worse because she keeps getting more views and more basically more having more of an impact that way. But speaking of such people. Surely you didn't expect to do a whole show and we don't even talk about Francesca, let alone see her. There's a video I want to show you. It's in Italian, but you can see the expressions, and I have a translation from our head of Italy desk, Marco, who kindly translated this for me. Let's watch the video, and we can kind of figure out what it is without knowing, but then we'll read the translation.
Che in essere a Gaza e credo che la fine del genocidio e la liberazione degli ostaggi siano condizioni necessarie per avviare, per quanto possibile, un processo di pace. Oggi, un attimo,
Okay, I
oggi
don't know how clearly people heard that. She's getting some award for something. This is what was said before the booing and her doing this facial expression and like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? What he said before that was, I believe the end of the genocide and the freeing of the hostages are necessary conditions to start a peace process. And when the hostages were mentioned, that's when the booing happened. That's where her facial expression, because her facial expression is an expression of like, you're giving me an award and you don't understand what we're really trying to do here. Like, you're giving these Zionist talking points about freeing people who went about their daily life and are now being held in concentration camp conditions, as if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice of him to pay lip service to the hostages, and even that's too far for people. So I think they're kind of, in a sense, to the extent that there's some decency left in the world, and there is still some. These people are shooting themselves in the foot by being just so overtly um, and non-sympathetic to the hostages. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe nobody cares anymore, almost. But yeah, that I mean, that it definitely is a true colors moment there. I just saw somewhere on a video on Twitter of some girl pulling the yellow ribbons off of a gate somewhere that someone put up, and I mean the tearing down of the hostage posters shortly after October 7th is just something that just was really hard for me to understand. Shortly after what we saw on October 7th, I mean, this is not people saying, hey, look at the bigger context and, none of that. This was just straight up like, haha, picture of a baby that's being held captive. Let's tear it down. Um, and these are like the types of people you could pass in the street, right? These are college students at UCLA and elsewhere. These are just normal looking folks. It really is just really hard for me to stomach. And it really only ought to strengthen the resolve of people in Israel and people worldwide that care about civilization. That complacence is not the way, that you really better be vigilant, because this world is not becoming a safer place.
Yeah, I also saw the video, I believe it's from London, of the girl tearing down the yellow ribbons and of course doing the um repeating doing the verbal retweet, as I call it, of oh, you're supporting genocide by saying that people who are taken out of their homes in a music festival should return to their homes. Um and what pissed me off about that, because I fully expect that from the pro-Palestinian side, they were tearing down posters and drawing swastikas on posters of children who were taken hostages in the immediate days after October 7th. So I certainly wouldn't expect them to see ribbons and not tear them down. But what disappointed me there was, and I go back to this, is what disappoints me about most of the people who defend Israel, because the people filming her when she said you're supporting a genocide, they got all defensive. And if somebody says to you when you express support for Israel that you're supporting a genocide, and then you start explaining why it's not a genocide, you are part of the problem. All they want is to move the conversation to the point where, again, the people with the GoPro cameras 2 years ago today who uh, proudly displayed the slaughter of as many innocent people as they could, they are the victims. You are discussing whether or not that is the case. And again, the World War II comparison is important here. Would you do this regarding World War II? Would you say to somebody who says, look, the Jews deserved it, uh, I disagree, but let's agree to disagree, or let's talk about it. No, you wouldn't. And so if you wouldn't back then, don't do it now. These people are the purest of evil that exists among the humans.
Right. People are both sort of canceling World War II. They're like canceling the mainstream narrative that should be mainstream, which is that there was a very clear good side and very, very bad side in World War II. The Axis were very antithetical to human life, any sort of political freedom, and any sort of just, they were there to squash um, humans wanting to live as human beings. And on the other side, you had a very relatively free side, the Allies like England and the U.S. and countries that were relatively very, very much standing out in history as being safe environments for human beings to live as human beings. People are canceling that. They're doing it on the left, of course. Oh, like basically, if any civilized country today wants to act the way that the Allies did, it's condemned and it's called genocide. So in that sense, um, they're canceling World War II. And on the right, there are certain elements of the right that are growing and scaring us. Elements of the right are one-upping the left and just saying, actually, we need to revisit if Hitler was the bad guy in World War II. We actually need to revisit if we were on the correct side of that world war in the U.S. and England. So um, that's what's going on. Another thing that the pro-Palestine voices do is they'll say like, okay, we're against hostage taking altogether. So yeah, let the hostages, the Israeli hostages out, but also, there's hostages, in Israeli prisons right now. Basically, anyone who was arrested for trying to stab the innocent, for trying to, to blow up, innocent Israelis, who's now in Israeli prison and probably deserves a death sentence, but instead is sitting in some sort of prison slash hotel resort, eating fresh food every day. That person is a hostage, all the same way in the view of these people. People like Cenk Uygur, who is just another symbol of our times. I mean, you look at Greta, who's like just a literal retard. Pardon me, who has become like a symbol of a worldwide political movement. Now you have a Cenk Uygur, this fat doofus who screams and does like a mocking voice of a child on a playground whenever he talks. This guy, him being famous is a real idiocracy moment. But yeah, he says, I'm against hostages. You know, you got however many millions of Palestinians that are hostages, right? They're all hostages. Everyone in Gaza was and is a hostage, right? Everyone in Judea and Samaria, you know, living under Mahmoud Abbas, they're hostages, right? Because Abbas is, I guess, a just an Israeli stooge. So, I mean, literal Israel disengages from Gaza, gives all the land, you know, to the Arabs to rule themselves, but it's still a concentration camp, and they're all still hostages. So literally, anything Israel does, anything the Jews do, Jews living is an act of hostility, and that's just the way people see it.
Yeah, Greta's not a literal retard, and that's what makes her evil. She is fully aware. And by the way, I see people when she's being criticized online, people saying, "Oh, why are you going after a little girl with autism?" Because when people talk back to her, she's a little girl with autism. But in fact, she is some sort of hero supposedly when she takes part in a war effort, which is, as we know, funded that specific effort on her part and her fellow travelers, funded by Hamas and run by Hamas. So yeah, she is a fully conscious, fully aware Hamas operative, and this again goes back to Israel doesn't just know this. Israel has published, showing connections, but then she shows up and they let her go. And then she shows up again and they let her go. So yeah, Israel really needs to revisit how it deals with these people. And we've said this on the channel. You let them go, you will get more next time, and more are on their way. And this is now what Israel is having to deal with. And remember, at some point, one of these ships will be like the Mavi Marmara, which was filled with Hamas operatives, which who beat up soldiers, almost killed some soldiers, and yeah, then what will Israel do? Probably still apologize and give money to the terrorists, as they did with the Marmara incident. Um, you mentioned canceling World War II on the left, revisiting it on the right. There's a different way in which many, especially on the left, are approaching it, and it's kind of done supposedly without fully, the right will go full anti-Semitic without mincing words. The left will go full anti-Semitic but will mince words because they like mincing words more. So the right, or people on the right, are more likely to talk about Jews, where when the left talk about Zionists. But they still do this on the left when they talk about European settler colonialists, and they say go back to Poland. Notice that they say go back to Poland specifically. There's a reason for that. There's a reason when they say go back to Poland, they don't mean Jews should pack their stuff. They somehow apparently all came from Poland recently. Pack their stuff, move to some village or to downtown Warsaw. No, they mean go back to Auschwitz. They mean go back to the death camps, go back to the gas chambers. That's exactly what they mean. Uh, and it's specifically Poland because that's where the Jews were slaughtered. By the way, if they want other places the Jews were slaughtered, they could say go back to Yemen, but they don't say that because that would make it settler colonialist as well. So yeah, there's too much in rewording things that we also let them get away with. On the one hand, we're responding when they say genocide, and we say no, it's really not a genocide. Israel is doing whatever it can to stop. And on the other hand, we're not listening when they say we want to finish the job that Hitler started.
Yeah. Like I was saying before, you know, first the Jews are scapegoated, and then any sort of attempt to kind of organize in a way that could shield themselves from persecution is met with increasing hostility, and the Jews are told, well, we were okay with you until you started to become Zionists and try to, control us all. Um, Look, you can't win against stupid people that are not thinking and not listening. You have to, you have to first of all meet force with force, but also you have to look at the cause of the stupidity and this just mass emotionalism, and understand that all roads do lead to the philosophy classroom. If anyone hasn't read Ayn Rand, and specifically Ayn Rand's take on history and Leonard Peikoff's takes on history in his writings and lectures, I think it's quite important. And the mistakes or the deceptions in the history of philosophy have brought about a sort of anti-counter enlightenment, you can call it, that have brought about what can be dubbed a return of the primitive, a book you should read by Ayn Rand. So I think, and this problem is not the Israel is not exempt from these errors or deceptions. The Israeli intellectuals, they study the same, German philosophy and French philosophy and all the same anti-enlightenment, counter-enlightenment writers and thinkers, same as intellectuals in universities around the world. The Israeli intellectuals blame themselves. They blame Israel. They've done as much as anyone else, as much work as anyone else to further this view that Israel is the bad guy in the Middle East and in the conflict with the Arabs. So all roads really do lead to the philosophy classroom if you're really going to trace back to the problem. And philosophers do rule the world, as I think Leonard Peikoff put it. And that's where the battle really ultimately is. As we see, we've got Israel, a very, very strong country, but lacking in moral confidence. So after an attack like October 7th, the fact that Israel didn't have the spine, that the leadership of Israel didn't have the spine, and the Israeli public didn't demand a serious response, a World War II style response to treat Gaza the way that England treated Dresden. And, the Germans did not do in England what the Gazans did in Israel. Still, when it's time for war, you have to treat the enemy like the British treated Germany. The fact that Israel didn't even have the moral confidence to do that, and they were, to this day, trepidatious, skeptical, unsure, and even when Israel gets the green light from, Daddy Trump, even when Trump says, I told Netanyahu to do whatever he wants, even then Israel doesn't do it. Bibi doesn't do it. The Israeli public have not thrown him the hell out of office by now. And they might say, well, because there's no better alternative in the political landscape. Well, if that's true, and I'm not sure it is, but even if that's true, that tells you something as well about the problem in the culture. So the fact that Israel doesn't have intellectual leadership, there's not a political movement or leadership reflecting an intellectual trend towards the types of ideas that are reflected here on this show, tells you that there's a problem in the intellectual culture. And the same is true with Europe, and the same is true in the US. The same is true anywhere where you're seeing evil, a flimsy, feeble, weak evil triumph over a strong good. Where you're seeing civilized people allowing themselves to be killed by savages. The problem is intellectual. It's not lack of weapons. It's not lack of equipment. It's not lack of anything. It's the lack of moral confidence. It's the lack of clear thinking. And ultimately, the problem is philosophical.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Leonard Peikoff, and this is definitely a book you need to read if you're going to read something by Peikoff about ironically, where we are today, considering this was published 43 years ago, the ominous parallels, uh, talking about the similarities philosophically between Germany when the Nazis, basically showing how they came about, what the philosophy was. Because again, it wasn't that the Germans woke up one day out of the blue being purely civilized, which is, by the way, it's something we hear sometimes. If you watch some documentaries, you'll see, oh, the Weimar Republic, it was so civilized and the art and so on. And no, there was that philosophical foundation that allowed the Nazis to get to power was there and had been built for a long time. And in a sense, I think if he was writing it today, some later parts would be easier to write. Certainly, what we're seeing today is in some cases identical. But yeah, this also takes me back to another thing that the pro-Palestinian side will say whenever the issue comes back. Oh, look at the genocide and so on, and then people will say, well, this war was started by the Palestinians. And then their favorite thing to say is it didn't start on October 7th, and that is true. This current war started on October 7th. But what actually, the whole conflict started uh, just by the fact that the Arabs do not want the Jews to live. And so, when they say it didn't start on October 7th, you'll notice unlike what the so-called peace movement in Israel tell us, which is just if Israel just goes back to the 1967 borders, all will be well. Nobody in the pro-Palestinian movement abroad, and nobody in the Palestinian movement in Gaza or the West Bank ever talks about the 1967 borders. That is complete fiction made up by leftist politicians in Israel and bought by politicians around the world. They talk about, now they're also being dishonest, but they talk about it started in 1948. What started in 1948 was Israel was established. The truth of the matter, this didn't start in 1948 either. It started in 1945. It started when World War II ended without the goal, without the mission being accomplished. And this is what they're fighting for. And some of them are honest or not honest, but truthful about it when they talk about it. Most of them are not. All of them mean the exact same thing. Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says, how would pro-Palestinians react if Hamas came to the UK and did what they did 2 years ago? First of all, they do it in bits and pieces. They don't do it on on that scale, but they did it, in Manchester, and they did it when not targeting Jews, but targeting whoever, because England, the UK it deserves it as much as maybe not as much as the Jews, but deserves it for not for being infidels as well. And how do they respond? Well, Palestinianism is a big tent, certainly here. In mosques, they will celebrate. In some other places, left-wing places, they might say, well, it's really concerning because Islamophobia will be on the rise. In some of the right-wing circles, they'll say, well, we should, deport Romanian construction workers. But they'll all respond to it badly. Let's put it that way. And the problem is the people who are not uh, openly pro-Palestine, as it's called, will also respond to it badly. I saw today Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer repeating what he said a couple of days ago when he said to protesters in favor of uh, going to protest in support of Palestine Action, the terrorist organization, saying, please don't do it today because we need police resources to protect synagogues. And then again today, he said, please don't do it today because it's sensitive, it's October 7th and so on. He doesn't understand, again, he doesn't understand what's going on here, or he intentionally pretends otherwise. Um, it's weird. Britain had a prime minister who chose to stick his head in the sand because he wanted peace in our time, and we know where that led, and we're repeating it now.
Yeah, we're all Chamberlains now, you could say. I mean, the whole Western world is just wants to sit down and shake hands with pure evil and hope they'll be spared. It's quite pathetic and it's scary, but again, you need a moral spine. You need moral confidence to live, period. And definitely when you're faced with evil, you need to have clear, philosophical moral confidence. Yeah, the Palestinianism, Palestine, it's not a call to return to the 67 borders. It's most definitely to overturn the results of the 1948 war. It's definitely the complete negation of Israel and the so-called Zionist entity. And that's all it ever was, and that's all it is. And with regards to how would people react if Hamas did what they did, in England or whatever. I mean, look, the Palestinian hand is in every terrorist sort of kind of adventure. You have 9/11. It was definitely not completely, separate from the calls to to erase Israel, and like Iran and bin Laden and all these people disagree as they may with each other on multiple things, and they're different types of Islam, right? Sunni, Shiite, and all that. But ultimately, we did see Palestinian type of movement come to New York on 9/11. We saw the bombings in London and elsewhere. Basically, these were happening at the Palestine movement was rising in Israel and around Israel in the 1970s. Israel was repeatedly pressured to appease this evil and to compromise with this evil, and the result was further terrorism around the world, further intimidation of free countries around the world, and any non-Muslim countries around the world. And ultimately, when you see 9/11 happening, this is after decades of America pressuring Israel to appease evil rather than to tame it and to bring evil to surrender. And what could America do at that time but also cower to evil, which is exactly what America ultimately did. And just like with Israel today, America after 9/11 was, the minute America started to go into Afghanistan, they're like, now they become the bad guys in the eyes of the world. And we're constantly discouraged from squashing the enemy. So America needed to kind of live with the premises they had operated under. They had always pressured Israel to practice restraint in response to terrorism, and now you see America also failing to confront a very weak but ideologically strong enemy. So, folks, we're all in this together. Anyone who wants to live in a civilization, anyone who values life, we're all in this together. Whether you ever plan to set foot in Israel or not, we're all in this together, and the solution, the antidote to this is philosophical, moral clarity in pursuit of life, civilization, political freedom, reason, and again, life. I like Mossab Hassan Yusuf. Then I'll pass you the mic. When he was first time he was on Piers Morgan, which was like a couple weeks after October 7th, I think, and it was obviously refreshing in that very dark period to see someone who grew up in the Palestinian territories speaking out on Israel's behalf the way that he does. And he was shouting, as he often does, and he said, the children in Gaza, they don't need more corruption and terrorism, and they need education. They need life. And he threw up his finger as he says, they need life. I love that very instinctive kind of like kind of cartoony kind of gesture, but I really liked it. I like him.
Yeah, he is a good guy, although he is very animated and loud.
And he sometimes says things, he's not a philosopher either. He also needs philosophical leadership, or he's going to end up God knows where. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely on the right side of this conflict.
Yeah, and again, like starting from where he started, first of all, show you very clearly that people are responsible for their own decisions even when they grow up in the worst possible society on the planet. So yeah, even Gazans educated by UNRWA in UNRWA universities, uh, they are responsible for what they um, choose to do. Oh yeah, you said we're all in this together. That doesn't apply to you trolls in the chat. You should really go live your values in Tehran or Riyadh or Pyongyang or one of those places. I'm not really sure, but it seems like you would fit in any of those places.
Can I say,
Sure.
like the trolls who watch this show, or the not very trolly pro-Palestine protesters, or the pro surrender movement in Israel, anyone who is sort of antithetic to Israel and other civilized countries doing the right thing. These people are like a fungus that grows when you're not like taking care of, you're not like taking care of your environment, right? When you don't have political clarity or philosophical clarity, you don't have political leadership that reflects that philosophical clarity, when you don't have moral clarity around you, you have these fungi grow around you. But I mean, they are really not the sort of source of the problem. It really is. The good that needs philosophical clarity. And so, for all the nausea that the anti-Israel world induces, Israel is really the one that needs to think clearly and with moral clarity. Same with the U.S. and with all people who want to preserve civilization. You need moral clarity and philosophical clarity, and that is what is going to save you.
Yeah,
Back to
and
you.
the person who is here every single day, no, Rucka was not calling you a fun guy. That's not what he meant. Um, yeah, you talk about the response to 9/11. I mean, remember, this is um, the immediate response by George W. Bush was to say Islam is a religion of peace. The next thing he did was to get a coalition, because how can America fight alone against, nomads in the Middle East? To get a coalition and to choose the opponent basically to choose who you're going to target, very much based on who you can get a coalition around. And okay, we know it's bin Laden. We know the Taliban is letting him stay in Afghanistan, so we're gonna go after them. And even that weakest opponent, fast forward 20 years later, they are back in power because America fought a war with the ideas that came about after the last time America fought a war properly. That for some reason America was somehow in the wrong in how it fought to win. And since then, it has fought to not win and has achieved not winning. And yeah, again, the fact that we are going in a few weeks to see somebody of the ideology, essentially a pro 9/11 person, become mayor of the greatest city in the world, where that the majority of the people on that day were murdered, is very much a sign, and nothing symbolizes the direction we're headed in general in the West, more than the fact that Mamdani is probably going to be mayor of New York. That should terrify everybody. And yeah, I
Yeah. And again, he's a fungus that grows where the environment is neglected, folks. Evil is impotent. Evil is not, produces nothing. I'm like channeling my inner Ayn Rand here. Like, evil offers nothing, produces nothing. Evil only benefits when the good compromises with it. And in the case of like a political landscape, when there's nobody offering clear political leadership for the good, with clear philosophical clarity for freedom, for the good, you end up having scum like Mamdani rising up. It truly is scary. It is shocking that he might win. I'm not looking forward to seeing him be mayor of New York. Do you have any more like clips or something you wanted us to watch before we wrap?
um Daniel, I think we had some. I don't remember what. Actually, you know what?
I was just
Should we put?
curious, just because I looked at the clock.
Yeah, maybe we should see the. Well, I'm wondering if. Okay, you know what? Let's see the flotilla one. This is a long one, but it's worth watching. This is uh one of the leaders. Actually, I think the leader of the current one, right? Whose name is also Greta, but different Greta.
Somebody in Australia, his name was Michael Shake, wrote to a bunch of us. We were all members of the International Solidarity Movement. And he sent out this notice and he said, I had this idea that maybe we could buy a boat in New York and we could sail it across the Atlantic and sail it down the coast of Europe and then into Gaza. I was sitting with my friend Mary Hughes Thompson, who is the other major co-founder. The two of us started this, and then we got another 5 people involved. And I looked at her and I said, "Oh, let's do it." One story that I always try to tell all of you is that once we finally got these crazy boats, they were moored in Greece. And I was in charge of the media office. That's my background. And I was in charge of the media office, and we were all in Cyprus. And so I would put out a press release, and it would say, "The boats are in Alexandria, getting ready to go." And then 2 weeks later, I'd say, "The boats have moved to Turkey, and they're getting ready to come to Cyprus." Well, the boats were never either one of those places. They were always in Greece. So the Zionists, when they want to attack me, they do that quite often, say to me all the time, "You lied all the time." I said, "Yeah, we did." Yoo-hoo, we lied.
Yeah, now, I mean, this is one specific example of a lie, but it's interesting that she mentions the international solidarity movement. Yesterday, we talked on the show briefly. Somebody brought up this clip that's been running around Twitter about the Israeli series Shtula, which I've been watching, which I highly recommend to people who speak Hebrew, and to people who don't speak Hebrew. You can fast forward, much of it is in English. Of a woman who was a Swedish woman, I believe, who was basically infiltrated the international solidarity movement, filmed them the whole time, filmed them talking about how they lie about basic stuff. They start fights with the IDF in Hebron or in different places in the West Bank. Then they show the footage of the IDF responding. There's a lot of bits where they say that their goal is to get rid of the state of Israel. One of them says, "I wish there was a bomb that would kill all Israelis." Yeah, I recommend people watch it. It was Israeli Channel 13. They have an app. The full thing is on there, all 5 episodes. And I assume we will do some shows about it on the channel. And yeah, it's a great look into these people. But the thing is, any of these protests is also a great look into these people. Even when they use the words, they don't say the quiet part out loud. They still say enough for us to know who they are, and they clearly draw the line. I say this on the show all the time. You cannot be a decent human being and support the Palestinians at the same time. You can, at different times in your life, realize your past mistakes, but it is not possible to not know what you're supporting. Or if you don't know what, that's the thing. If you look at any of these protests in London or in any of the cities around the West, all the people there are Nazis, as far as I'm concerned. They're not all Nazis like Hitler or Goering or Himmler or anybody you've ever heard of. Many of them are like the Nazis nobody has ever heard of. They're like the person who, was super gung-ho to join, the Wehrmacht to fight, to occupy whatever European country, or the person who wasn't gung-ho, but was just like, okay, this is what we're doing, so we'll do it. Yeah, it's over 5 million German soldiers died in World War II. Do you think they were all fully ideologically committed? Some of them were, some of them weren't. The same is true of the pro-Palestinians, but all of them are a part of the mission to exterminate the Jews.
Yeah, nobody's conscripting them to this war. They're doing it voluntarily, whereas at least you could say that the Germans needed to go to war by law. Not that exempts them from deserving to be defeated brutally until surrender. In the case of Germany as well. Yeah, look, the lady we just saw in that video is an intellectual. She's she has more power. She wields more power than anyone carrying any weapon, folks. That right there is a person who influences others. She can control other people without laying a finger on them. She can get them to do what she thinks what she wants them to do with ideas. Ideas are where the battle is won, and you cannot meet the emotionalistic mob with just more emotionalism and riling up a bigger mob. It's just if the game in town is evil, you're not gonna the good is not gonna win at the game. You need intellectual leadership. You need intellectual clarity. You need philosophical clarity, moral clarity. And and every time we see these like a lady, presumably leftist, feminist, whatever, wearing the stupid Arabic scarf, and and everyone points out, God, don't you realize, what they do to gays in Gaza and what they do? It's like what they do to women in Arab culture, in whatever Palestinian culture. Dude, they don't care. Okay, This is not new either. Che Guevara, the Cuban symbol, the communist icon. He hated gays. He hated blacks. He butchered women and children for fun, not even to like further communism, just to like because he had the power to do it and to kill who he felt like killing. And still, that's not because people they're not judging him by that. They're just judging him as he antithetic to what we hate, and what we hate is the good. We hate places like America for its virtues. I'm speaking now as a leftist. We hate the good and we support whatever is antithetic to the good. That's why the youth in recent times on TikTok are rediscovering that Osama bin Laden actually wrote some really based, stuff about anti-colonialism stuff. Yeah, bin Laden actually was the cool guy in that whole thing. This is what we're dealing with, folks. And again, these scum, they are fungus. They grow. I'm really loving this metaphor. They like grow in a swimming pool with no chlorine, and the chlorine that we need is philosophical. So I really can't recommend that you all look at the name of this channel and read Ayn Rand. It takes a philosopher to beat a philosopher, folks. It takes a philosopher. Good stuff, huh? Yeah. Do you have something? I mean, I'll just, in conclusion today, the October 7th events changed me. I know it's like a part of me says, but we always knew that if they could, they would. We always knew what would happen if the people on the Palestinian side got a chance to have their way with the Israelis. We always knew it was there. So why is anyone surprised, or why should this change anything? This war should have been waged before. But we also knew that Israelis, like all Western nations, like all Western people, are lacking in moral clarity. They're lacking in moral confidence to preserve their own lives, and they're going to look for any excuse to get out of that responsibility. And that's what we've seen, unfortunately. We've seen appeasement. We've seen apologizing to the world, and we've seen weakness, and that needs to change. So, folks, this needs to change. And like for me, like I'm not interested in talking to anyone who's pro-Palestinian. After October 7th, there is just no wiggle room. There's no like, oh, maybe they don't know any better. We all saw the same footage. We all know exactly what took place within a certain range. We all know the nature of the events, and there's just no excuse anymore. Nobody could claim to be on the side of the good and the side of life if they support the Palestinian cause. And last year I was on the show October 7th, and I glanced at the comments afterwards, and like somebody said, they responded to me saying that Israel's response was weak, and and whatever I said, like weak in response to October 7th, and they go, "What? They destroyed every building in Gaza. The people's homes are destroyed. Monster." They called me monster, and I'm thinking like, being called a monster by someone who's sympathetic to the Gazans, like I just don't know by what standard you're even judging human character, moral character. I mean, we're looking at people who did the October 7th events, who participated in it, who celebrated it, who wish to do it again, and you're worried about the real estate, and by the way, and Israel destroying their buildings, their homes, is only because there's tunnels beneath those buildings that needed to be blown up. And it's overall a pretty weak response, if you ask me. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. So anyone who has a Palestine flag on like social media, I block. It doesn't matter who it is. It could be the fan of mine. I block them. Could be a beautiful woman. While some of you out there are like virtue signaling all day on the internet, and you'd probably sell your own mother for a half decent looking girl. I'm quietly blocking Instagram models who are, in my DMs if they have any sort of expression of sympathy for the PLO, with the PLO flag anywhere. Like folks, some things are more important than, some pretty girl grinning at you. Some things are more important in this world. Yes, Razi, what do you have to say as we wrap this
Yes,
memorable moment of a show?
it's not as clear cut, but yes, that is correct. And by the way, you block them quietly. When I see that I'm somehow Facebook friends with somebody with a PLO flag, I do it loudly. I make a point and then I unfriend them. And yeah, absolutely. For me, there is it's you are morally irredeemable if you support the Palestinians. There was a point I wanted to make, and I can't remember what it was, but Ziv asks a question. How much of it do you think is ignorance? How much is evil? And how much is the combination of both? So first of all, I still see people who say on social media, on Twitter mostly, um, oh, they talk about October 7th. Why is there no evidence? And then people respond to them with like the links to all the videos. But yeah, some people heard about this. The people, the many people on the streets, it wasn't their cause necessarily on October 6th, 2023. Became their cause post October 7th. Could have been November 2023, could have been November 2024, and they didn't do, they didn't do the work. So in some cases it might be ignorance, but in all cases it's evil. If you are not knowledgeable about something and you make it your cause in life, that makes you evil. Also, again, if you look at this situation, I go back to this Syria's Shtula and the girl, the girl that was undercover before she goes to the West Bank. They tell her, they prep her, and there's a meeting, and the guy explains, look, every female ISM activist who we've ever sent there has been sexually harassed, sexually assaulted, not like called pretty or whatever counts as sexual harassment in the West, actually touched like multiple times by men. And then they explain, well, they have a different sexual morality there. And if you're a foreign woman and you're blonde and so on, then yeah, that's something to expect. So yeah, they know the more active they are, the more they know what they are active in favor of, and they just they run with it. So they're all evil. And yeah, on the point of the buildings, look, Gaza does look like Dresden, but the Dresden people weren't called it ahead of time, and this is why. After Dresden, the Germans surrendered, whereas with Gaza, they're still fighting because, as I always say on this show, buildings don't kill people, Palestinians kill people. And if Israel doesn't learn that lesson, it will keep fighting buildings and it will keep getting killed by Palestinians.
Yeah, Israel has a tendency to punish terrorists by bulldozing their homes. So they do have a tendency to punish the building, punish the home. But yeah, and that's a very weak reaction. It clearly shows that they're out of touch with the ideology of the people or the motivations of the people they're at war with. But yeah, definitely the blowing up of Gaza is all because there's like tunnels beneath those buildings, or because there's Hamas operatives inside those buildings, or whatever it is. And very, very often, all too often, Israel sends soldiers into these booby-trapped places instead of blowing them up from the air. We didn't talk a lot today about Israel's, policy of weakness in the battlefield. We mostly talked about, world reaction and whatnot. Israel prioritizes their number one priority, and prepare for your minds to explode, folks, because, I know you can shout your lies all day, and your Muslim friends and your leftist friends and your new right-wing revisionist friends could all shout the same lies. Your professors can shout the same lies, and the media can shout the same lies, but the facts are still the facts. And the fact is, Israel prioritizes number one the lives of Gazans. That's the number one sacred cow to the IDF. Beneath that is the hostages that are in there. They don't want to hurt them if if they can avoid hurting them in the process of fighting this war. Beneath that, you have Israeli soldiers. Their lives are prioritized beneath those of the Gazan civilians, and beneath all of them are the Israeli civilians who are sadly living in danger of being attacked again in the future, especially now that Israel's going to probably release every goddamn terrorist they've ever arrested. Um, yeah, folks, I just want to mention before I forget some literature I suggest you pick up on the topic of America's, sloppy war on terror. Read "Winning the Unwinnable War," edited by Elon Jorno. It's a great way to help you understand just what's been going on in America since 9/11 and before 9/11. Also, on more apropos to what we're discussing here today and what this channel is focused on mostly. What Justice Demands, also by Elon Jorno. What Justice Demands. It's an easy read. I mean, it's not a college textbook. I think you could I think you could really it's a page turner, and it'll offer you a lot of clarity. So it's not just about being on the right side of this conflict. It's about having clarity. It's about understanding and being able to articulate yourself, if even just in your own thoughts.
Yeah, What Justice Demands is the best book that I've ever read on the conflict. I will respond to Ziv asking another question. Do you think there is even a point in Hasbara or Israeli advocacy? I've seen some that have changed their opinions after seeing the truth and realizing the wrongs of their way. Look, first of all, there's the fact that, there's a choice that I personally make, which is not to engage with anybody who I'm not talking just pro-Palestinian. Anybody with sympathy to the Palestinians, to me, I don't want that as part of my life. Now, if you are somehow able, I have a friend who spends a lot of time in Norway and told me that, he was talking to somebody and she was saying, oh, the genocide, blah blah blah, and he started talking to her, and he's a much more calm person than I am generally, but he just talked to her calmly. He said, I have daughters. I wouldn't want them living in a society like Gaza. He explained kind of the different sides of the conflict, and somehow, uh, I don't know if she's pro-Israel now, but she certainly doesn't have the opinion she had before that conversation. If you encounter such people, if you can talk to them, go for it. I don't want to, but again, I also understand the context of my own life, which is I kind of live in a sort of objectivist safe space where I don't have to, for my career and so on. I think about places I've worked in the past, like offices where if that was what I was doing post October 7th, I don't know how I don't think I would have lasted because I would have just told people exactly what I think and not in the nicest terms.
The first week after October 7th, Israel had the opportunity to act quickly and forcefully and treat Gaza like Dresden was treated. And that would have gone a very far, long way in bringing about surrender and teaching a lesson to the Gazans and to aggressors in general. But they didn't. And I remember 1 week after October 7th is when the first time I saw Pierce Morgan, you know, the symbol of this, debate, quote unquote, tweeting out, but how can further killing be justified? So for that first week, oh, Israel, ooh, poor Israel. What's Israel going to do? Everyone's just kind of waiting to see what happens next. Israel waited and waited more and waited more. And, you lose a lot of, and again, these fungi, they grow over time when you're not doing what you're supposed to do. But yeah, I mean, more than a quick response to October 7th, what Israel needs is moral clarity and moral self-confidence. There's a lot of Israelis that are not appeasers, and they do not want. They have a very realistic view of Arab culture in Gaza and in the West Bank. They're aware of it, but they need leadership, intellectual leadership, political leadership as a wing of that intellectual leadership. Thus far, it's mostly religiously motivated leadership in Israel, but it is there, and they may. We have, Israel has not had elections since October 7th. And so, despite the fact that most Israeli right wingers have just, protected Netanyahu rather than trying to protect the country, I think, you might see a change the next time there are elections. I don't know. And also, there are people like the aforementioned Einat Wilf, who is very much an atheist, secularist, leftist on like economics and all types of things, social issues, but has a very sober way of speaking about the Arab-Israeli conflict that makes you think she's more of a Churchill type when it comes to prosecuting this war. So there is some hope. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if all hope is lost, but I do believe the solution to Israel's problem lays in Israel itself, just like as with any other country. It's it's an inside job for them to choose life over death. Should we call it a wrap, you think?
Yeah.
All right. Well, this was very sad. This is a very sad day, and this was not a very happy vibe here today for me. I'm really just not in a great mood, but I think we're doing important work here by speaking truth to power, so to speak. I'm sure plenty we didn't get to, but yeah, read, and support causes that you believe in, and you know, I apologize for my robot over there taking a life of its, having a mind of its own suddenly. The battery ran out earlier, so it's sitting there charging, and then it just starts resuming its cleaning while we're doing a goddamn podcast on the internet. This is, this is the type of stuff we have to deal with in this world. But may
Yeah.
that be our biggest problem.
I think I said this last year when we did the show on October 7th. And I'll say it again. I hope next year we'll do a show on October 7th where we'll say, oh, look, we didn't realize uh, Israel and Netanyahu were just waiting for 2.5 years into it to actually do what needs to be done. And now there is peace. Unfortunately, I think whether you're back next year on October 7th or not, the topic of the show will be why Israel still isn't winning, why the support for the Exterminate the Jews movement has grown, and like I said in all those first episodes after the attack, I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, and I just did glance at the chat just as like a last minute kind of caving in. And someone keeps repeating, leftists are the new Nazi. Yeah, and the old Nazis were also arguably on the left. I mean, there's just freedom, there's political freedom, reason-based individual rights in politics, and then there's everything else. So you can call everything else the left if you want, call everything else collectivism, or whatever, however you want to categorize it. There's just the truth, there's the good, and then there's everything else. And yeah, Israel is not reliant on anybody to, defend it properly. You don't need, because he's saying like, oh, how can Israel can't when the leftists defend Islamo-Nazis. True. But what's the antidote? Who's standing up to the leftists and putting them in their place? You need moral leadership. You need philosophical leadership. You need philosophical clarity. And that is my browsing of the comments for today and probably for the year. Thank you all. Is that it for us? We went for quite some time. Thank you all, everybody. This was a wonderful episode. I think we'll look back on this episode one day and kind of smile, not because it was a happy time, but just look how young we looked back in those days. Look how thin we were. And yeah, we did some great work here today. Hey, maybe we'll get the nod on the awards show. Maybe we'll win, rather than just another, show with you and Nikos going like, and the best hilarious Twitter user is Kirk Wilcox. He knows how to put objectivism into a tweet. Ropa Ricapol. So, thank you all for joining us, and I'm sure the Daily Objective will be back tomorrow, and keep up the good work. And like I've told you, Razi, you're a breakout star. You don't want to be here. You hate this, but you are good at it. You're good at like knowing what you're going to say right away and getting right to the point. I unironically told you you could be the next Charlie Kirk. Not necessarily on college campi, but you could be that son of a bitch that nobody wants to have to face. So, if you can dream it, you can do it. Just like Mossab Hassan Youssef, you look like somebody who should be on the side of Hamas, but that's what gives you credibility and a chance to reach those who would normally rule you out.
Well, I appreciate the compliments, both backhanded and front-handed. And yeah, I do prefer the behind the scenes role. But look, behind the scenes or in front of the camera, I really do hope we go back to shows where we talk about how the Guardian tells us to save the planet by not flushing the toilet. That would be nice, and then we can talk about who is on the shows.
Well, what Israel requires to win is the type of change that might also reduce the Guardian style environmentalist trash. And what I mean is a turn to reason and that. Thank you for joining us today. That's it for me. Believe me, I will not be back. But it was a nice little, trip down memory lane here on the Daily Objective. Shout out to the channel and all you folks watching at home. Thank you, Razi, for having me on. And stay real, everybody. Keep it real. And goodbye.